Becca.
Good evening, friends. I had been told that I'll be standing here to speak to you at 7. So it's 3 hours late. You blame it on the MC, right? I've been here since 5:30, so blame it on her. Listen, always a pleasure to be back home. Uganda is home, so I miss it a lot. So thanks for inviting me again, William. William and I have been friends because we started this thing many years ago at the Sheraton. People might not remember. So it's good to be back here to share my opinion. Mine is an opinion, so don't argue about it. It's just an opinion, all right? And when the question was asked, I didn't know, is it rhetorical or is it a serious question? So William being a jolly guy, I thought this was just a rhetorical question. It's not a serious question, really. Because I do believe that in spite of everything else that is being said about technology, the most secure job there is for a good marketer. And I qualify it. It's not that people who are doing marketing are marketers. And I'll come to that. I'll speak to it. So good marketers, you are safe and secure. In fact, the reason you are hearing accountants leaving what they trained to do to come to marketing, because it is exciting here. And it is boring there. So you are secure, guys. You're really secure. Don't worry about this. So when this question was asked, I thought about, you can answer this many ways. Is it an ethical question? Or is it a business question? Or is it a professional question? Or is it just a social question? When I left my O levels, I was a very good scientist. So I had been designed to go and do science at high school. So I decided to go back to the most famous school at the time, Namasagali College, for my high school, and I chose to do human sciences, which other people call arts. When I finished university, and I chose to join the Coca-Cola company as a graduate trainee, my dad asked me, what is it you're going to be doing at Coke? I told him, I'm super excited. I've been invited to join a graduate program for marketing people. For you who are Ugandans, until recently, marketing people were called abatembei, hawkers. So my dad was extremely disappointed that after doing so well at university, I'm only going to become a hawker. Marketing has evolved over time, and it is one of the most misunderstood things. And because it is misunderstood, sometimes discussions like this come up. So let me just do my bit in allaying the fears of those who might be scared. It evolves. You have to be good. You have to evolve with it. It is not true that everybody who is occupying a marketing job is a marketer. It's not. So all you have to do is transform yourself into a good marketer fast. All right? That's the message I want to leave in the room. Transform yourself into a good marketer fast. Here is my story. To practice marketing, you always have to care about 3 plus 6 things. I'll talk about the 3 and then the other 6. The 3 things are all centered about the consumer. What are they? Do you understand your consumer? Other people call it empathy. Do you truly understand the context in which you are practicing marketing? Talk about the trends. And then the final thing is, what are the expectations of the job at the time you're doing it? If you bring those 3 things together, you'll be good. What are the expectations? Do you understand the consumer deeply, consumer empathy, and the context in which you're doing the job? Those are the 3. On the other 6 is to understand why people buy. People do not buy because you've analyzed them to death, or they don't. People buy because of only 6 things. One is because what you're selling gives them more. Sometimes because what you're selling gives them less. It elevates their experiences or gives them fun. They can afford it. They can find it. And you know what? It works. Those are the 6 fundamental reasons why people buy. And a marketer who gets confused, then you might measure market share, you might measure conversion, and all these nice things we all measure. You always have to ask yourself the question, what are the 6 reasons that is driving your share? If it's none of the 6 or the 3, you have a problem. So I'll speak to some of these very quickly. Let me start with the context. The context of this discussion of questioning marketing always, and I use the word always, comes up when there is an economic flux. When organizations are under pressure, when consumers are chasing for value, there is always a question, does brand marketing really work? After all consumers are seeking for is something that works at the cheapest possible price. That is what always happens, right? And in asking that question, we forget that the fundamental foundation for marketing is laid on the traditional 4 Ps plus the new 4, which are the 8 Ps. And one of them is product. Does your product work? And the other is price. Is your price accessible? So it is okay sometimes when consumers are under economic pressure that they seek for value over and above the brand promises. And I'll come to that. So understanding the context is that the consumer we are selling to now is under flux. And I'll give you some examples. From a social point of view, when I was still doing marketing in Uganda, we had people who were called male and other people who were called female. Marketers these days are dealing with fluid individuals, isn't it? They are neither male, they are neither female. Therefore, you have to understand, how then do I deal with this individual? That's a social flux, isn't it? We always got worried when our consumer base was growing old. We were told, one of the problems I have is I don't have enough young consumers in my consumer base. The highest spenders in the world now are the retired old millionaires. They are driving trends. It is them buying the best Range Rovers. It is them buying the yachts. It is them buying the best estates. It is them influencing furniture. The most in-thing furniture now in the world is retro. It's not the new, it's the retro. And it's being influenced by the taste of the retired millionaires. So for a marketer not to understand that context, you miss the opportunity. So it is the context in which you're marketing. The other thing which is about society is that the population structure is changing. It is no longer about rural or urban. It is both. It is both. One individual both lives in the city and in the countryside. And therefore, their decision and behavior is driven by both influences. Over the weekend, they're in shags, as we call it in Kenya. Shags means village. And during the week, they're in the city. But both things are influencing them. So it's no longer necessary for you to categorize your consumer as rural or urban. It doesn't just make sense. So enough on consumer context and social. Technology, technology enables and accelerates disruptions. That is all it does. It enables and accelerates disruptions. And what has technology done to the consumer we market to? It has done 3 things. How do they socialize? How do they consume information? How do they make decisions to buy? Those are the 3 things that really technology has done. But what has not changed is that human emotion still exists. Unfortunately, for me, being an economist, I know while I was told in economics class that consumers are rational, in many years of practicing marketing, I know consumers are irrational. They are irrational. And that's why They buy things at premium prices, even themselves cannot explain why they had to pay that amount of money, but they just love it. Our role as marketing is to blur the choice between rational and irrational. And that's where the value really lies. On economic, we do know people are under pressure. All researches you're reading, and I'm sure you have the same information I do have, people are under pressure. And because they're under pressure, they're looking for fewer things, more basic things, and they're looking for things that work and they trust. So while on one side you think, because they're under so much economic pressure, they're only going to be chasing after things that are cheap, it is at that time that they don't want to experiment with brands they don't trust. It is at this point when consumers are actually shifting brands or prostituting brands that there is a big opportunity for a marketing person to say, you know what, I know you're under pressure. You will not take something which won't work. So build trust and faith in the product that you offer during a crisis. All right? I think the other for me is the gap between those who have and those who don't. As big cities become bigger, for us who are practicing marketing, unfortunately, we are confronted with a population that is hurting because as the people flow from the villages into the cities, they confront inequality. And it is inequality which is the problem. It's not absolute poverty. So when somebody is seated on the other side of Naguru Hill and looks down in the morning, they're seated in a slum, but there are people playing golf at 9. How does it make them feel? The guy is so rich that he can afford to play golf at 9. Meanwhile, the guy in the slum in Naguru is looking. He doesn't know whether he'll have lunch. It is that creates the sense of, therefore, for me as a consumer, how are you going to talk to me in a way that I can relate with you as the brand? And I'll come to some of the proposals that I have of what else we could do. Environmental. We do know that for us who in marketing, consumers are now really, really concerned about what we do and say about the environment. Ensuring that the products are recyclable, the packaging is not one that destroys the environment, energy use, and what we say about that, all right? So all of this is context. The final thing on context is politics. There's a lot of insurgencies across the world. Political insurgents, small parties, young parties, of angry people. Actually, people hunkering in, whether it is in France or Samalema in South Africa, and whatever, there is a huge insurgency of political dissatisfaction. And how does that manifest itself in consumers? Consumers do not trust big organizations. Consumers actually do not trust brands. And that's the reality. So once you accept that that's the context in which you are working, then what do you do about this? In 2023, there are some really significant things happening that I would be leaving with you in the room as marketing people. One is the economic crisis means that people are in a survival mode. And when people are in a survival mode, what is it they do and how do they make the choices? We shall come to that. Loss of confidence in leadership is a big thing. So big brands are losing consumers faster than insurgent brands. It's a phenomenon you are seeing in government. It's a phenomenon you're seeing in private sector. It's a phenomenon you're seeing in industry. And that is also affecting big brands across the world. Consumers actually, post-COVID, are swinging back into aspirational brands faster. There was always a view that because of what COVID did, and then we came into the global economic crisis, premium aspirational brands are in trouble. It's not true. Actually, we are seeing aspirational brands grow faster. My colleagues who work at Johnny Walker possibly would confirm that Johnny Walker is growing fastest during and after COVID than it did before. And we see that with many other premium brands across the world. Why is that? The threat of death that COVID reminded people just want to give themselves a good time. People just want to treat themselves well. People want to consume better. People want to look after themselves, all right? And I think the The other trend that we're seeing is the one of well-being. People really looking after themselves and ensuring they eat well, they look good, they sleep well, they have a balanced life. So those are major trends that we are seeing in 2023 that as marketing people you might want to care about in case you're not doing that already. But therefore, for consumers who are in a flux, as I've described here, what do you do? So yes, Henry, you're right. Brands are no longer in control. The truth is, brands are no longer in control, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Because once you are not in control, the expectation from society for you to lead them becomes less. So the pressure for you as a marketing person is to have a conversation rather than provide leadership. Because the society is such in a flux that if the burden of leading is upon you as a brand, it becomes difficult. But if you're part of the conversation, you are providing a point of view. And that's, if some of you are reading the latest materials on marketing, campaigns or campaign ideas, it is about providing a point of view. This is not leading consumers or giving direction. Okay? And all of that is coming from the fact that brands are just accepting that they've lost control. Consumers are prioritizing spending on fewer basics. That is true. And if you know that, then you have to work really hard to understand how do I become part of the short list of the things that consumers are spending on now. So they're shopping less, the baskets are becoming smaller, they're shopping more frequently because they can't spend every week. And all of this means that the shopper missions that they do every week are increasing. And for all of us who are practicing marketing, the idea of a loyal consumer, the fact that they bought you on Monday, they will buy you on Friday, does not exist. So for us is now to know that every time they walk into those shopper missions, 5 times a week or 7 times a week, every single one time of those missions, they make different decisions. So it's becoming more complicated, that the fact that you touch them on a Monday and they bought you does not mean that they're going to buy you on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. When consumers are making less shopper missions, it becomes easier because then it's once a week. I do a big shopping for my pantry fill. It is easier for you to deal with that kind of consumer behavior. But if somebody is having to go to the kiosk twice a day, I live in Kenya, I go to Mombasa a lot. The folks in Mombasa, they shop for every meal. For breakfast, she will go to the market and shop. For lunch, she will go back and shop. For dinner, she will go back and shop. So this is somebody who, if they bought your curry in the morning, does not mean they're going to buy your curry at lunchtime. Does not mean they're going to buy your curry for dinner. So the complexity of holding attention of that kind of consumer is becoming really, really difficult. And we will have to come to, therefore, what do we do? All right? They're shopping less volume, obviously partly because prices have been going up. The income is under pressure. But also, the way consumers are consuming, they want everything now. So if I have 1 million Uganda shillings, I want everything now. I can't afford to keep airtime of 100,000 on my phone. In fact, when I speak to my nieces and nephews, they think that is stupid. Why would you keep 100,000 on your phone? If you use 5,000 every 2 hours, load 5,000 every 2 hours. What's the problem? So it's because consumers are seeking to have everything now. And that means that it's just 1 million they have, and everybody is fighting for that 1 million, and they're going to have to make many, many decisions about your brand and your category many times a day. I was reading some research, I think it was by Ipsos or somebody, and it was interesting. Consumers are asking you, the brand owners, talk to me in my language. When I was still working on global brands, Coca-Cola, Guinness, John Walker, we always spoke to consumers in English, all right, or French, depending on where you live. But this report was saying, a survey was done, I think, 2 months ago or so, and 80% of Ugandans are saying they listen to TV programs in their language, 80%. And 66% of Ugandans were saying, I listen to radio programs in my language. So for you who is running a global brand, how then do you convince your head office that's a good idea for John Walker to have it communication in Luganda, or that Guinness is going to speak in Rotoro. That is, I think, the new challenge that we as marketers have, to be convincing the stakeholders internally that because of the changing consumer and the context in which we're doing marketing, being bilingual or speaking local language is no longer a reflection of being less premium. So it is a change in the context, but it's not a change in the practice or the principles in which you have to execute the marketing. Traditional, I like going between marketing and sales because, like Henry says, the two things are fusing and they're mashing. One of the interesting trends that we're seeing is that actually there was a lot of hula about e-commerce and, oh yeah, this is the death of traditional trade. It is funny that actually traditional trade has become stronger and on-premise consumption has become stronger. The drivers being two, it is cheaper, and number two, the serving of single serves, the sachets or little packs. You won't get that a lot if you go to Carrefour or you go to some of the supermarkets. So the resilience of the traditional trade means something for the marketing team and the marketing people. So for me, if you were a brand manager now in Uganda, you'd be saying, have I built strong enough a plan to continue growing my brands in the three areas where growth is coming from? It's coming from traditional trade, all right? It's coming from single-serve SKUs, and it's coming from occasions where more than one person is using your product. So it is group consumption. The myth that Africans are like white people, they buy things for themselves as individuals, is not true. In most of Africa, what we are seeing is that consumption decisions are driven by a unit more than the individual who is buying. I'm a mother buying for the children. It works for the children. I'm the head of family. It works for the family. I'm in an industry now where we sell hygiene and personal care. For people who have worked for brands like Unilever would know this. One of the reasons liquid detergents are not very popular in Africa because it's difficult to measure the use per occasion. Imagine you have a teenager and you give them liquid soap or shower gel to go to. The thing might be empty by the time the guy is finished showering. So when that kind of head of family is making a decision, it's just not for them, but it's in the behavior that exists for the people they look after and the people who depend on them. So as you are targeting who the shopper, who the decision maker is, you also need to understand the context in which they live, and the decisions are driven by how the behavior in the family or the immediate unit influences the brand usage. Okay? Because consumers are so burdened and are adapting to this new reality of social economic flux, a survey was done recently in Kenya, in East Africa, and 44% of people feel they have less income than they had a year ago, and 36% of people are super worried about unemployment, loss of jobs, all right? Those are two big things which are really current and real for the consumers. And therefore, how are they manifesting that behavior in interaction with your brands? One is they just want things that work. So doing fancy campaigns at the moment is a good thing, but be careful. They're only listening for what are the best messages in the thing. Does it work? Is it higher value? Is it better? Has it less this? Has it more of that? Going back to the 6 reasons that consumers buy, reasons why consumers buy. So as you develop your campaigns now, do not forget, consumers are really listening for what is the real message. Are you giving me more? Is it less carbs? Is it more proteins? You have to be back to the basics, all right? The second thing is about consumers are really worried about the future planning. So just know that if somebody is earning 10,000 a day, their ability to think about, if I don't go to that construction site tomorrow and earn another 10,000, I still have a family to feed. So consumers are thinking more about, I've got an income now, I may not have it tomorrow, and therefore they are delaying some consumption decisions that they used to make without even thinking about it a lot about a year ago or so. So if I were somebody who is doing marketing in Uganda now, I would be saying, what percentage of income decision can I hold on to every day? So understanding how consumers are allocating their wallet and being able to participate in those decisions. And for you who have either practicing, customer experience, you will know that tracing the consumer journey and mapping it against your product, determining what are the touch points for my product for this consumer in the day, it will give you some insights on where you can participate in their spend decisions, all right? Understanding what has shifted in the way consumers are spending is another very important thing that I'll be speaking to just in a minute, right? There's uncertainty, and because there is uncertainty, people are questioning, is it important for me to remain loyal, all right? But it's true that a loyal consumer is very useful to your brand over time. What I think needs to change for a person practicing marketing now is think about every consumer every day as if they are new consumers you're just recruiting. It doesn't matter that they buy you every day, they go to the shop. Every time think about them as, if I'm recruiting this person for the first time, how would I speak to them? How do I position my product? Because you know what? Tomorrow, the shopper missions are very many. The competing decisions they have to make for limited income are a lot. And like I said, they're just looking for the basic things that work for them every day. So a study was done by Nielsen. I was one of the speakers 3 months ago or so on what are the insights in East Africa. And they really presented great work that they had done across Africa. For East Africa, including Uganda, 7 out of 10 consumers have changed brands in any category over the last 1 year. 7 out of 10. So consumers are buying something different. 7 consumers out of 10 are buying something different this year compared to a year ago. When you think about that, you're like, oh my God. But when we went through the data, and this is where I disagree with Henry, and I'm seeing chairs here. I hope we are going to disagree. What came through that categories that had strong brands had less switching? And listen to this. In East Africa, the categories that had the lowest switching were Femicare, because they have strong brands. I don't want to give anybody airtime, but because they have strong brands. Number 2, alcohol, because alcohol has got very, very strong brands. CSDs, soft drinks, had very low switching, again, because they had very strong brands. While the more commoditized and the weaker categories had the most switching. Top of the list was telecoms. Top of the list was telecoms. Somebody doesn't care what airtime, where it comes from, it works. But if somebody is going to drink something, they care about what they drink. So, depending on which category you are, you have to be careful. There are categories that lend themselves to very strong brands, like those I've talked about. There are categories which do not and are driven by product efficacy. So if I were going to be hanging around with Airtel, the most important thing for me is efficacy. Does the thing work? Does it do what it promises? If I'm going to be hanging around with John Walker Blue, the consideration is, how do I look? How does it make me look? Because at the end of the day, it might be alcohol, fine, but it's a blue label, come on. So it makes me look different, makes me look better. The phone line I've called you on, maybe not. So as marketers, the principles might be the same, but just understanding that there are some categories that need different nuancing and looking at that differently. I think the other thing is to then say, so what does all of this mean? All right? Because the question on the board is there danger for marketers? I'm saying there is no danger for marketing, but there are some people who are seated in marketing jobs. Of course, they will be asked to leave. I'm not surprised people are being asked to leave in 38 months. If you're not doing your job, you're not evolving with the discipline, of course they'll ask you to leave. Because any organization that is serious about the insights, can you apply them? Can you execute campaigns and execute them properly? Do you understand what competition is doing, and are you going to keep ahead of them? Being where the consumers are. So Henry is right. For me, the best research is walk out your office, wander around the streets, go and hear consumers give you the unfiltered truth. I don't like focus groups anymore because you invite them, you give them chips and chicken, air conditioned. Of course, they can guess that you want a good answer. They will give you the good answer. If you want to hear how it is, go to a window market. Don't tell them who you are, and just listen. So listening to consumers in their environment, I think Henry is right, gives you the best insights, right? So if I were a marketing person, I think there's all AI tools and analytics and everything else, but you're dealing with emotional people. If I tell you I don't like you in a cold voice, versus Tolu is Nigerian. When a Nigerian tells you she doesn't like you, the voice, the tonality, you can't express that in a research, can you? Because you're still reporting that the report says they don't like you. But if you were there and just saw the animation, you would understand the problem is stronger than the statement I would have read in a report. So I do agree with Henry. As a practicing marketer, please be out there as frequently as you can and listen to the unfiltered truth from consumers. So what does this mean for consumers? It's to say, during a crisis like we are in now, and I'm sure this conversation is happening because marketers are feeling we're in a crisis, budgets are being cut, CEOs are not listening to us enough, CFOs have been given our jobs, all the things that Henry was saying. But I think during a crisis, just always understand that consumers will switch brands during a crisis. That is the reality. They will always switch brands. So for you then is to say, if I know that that is going to happen, the way I'm going to market to this is every day is an opportunity to recruit this consumer as if they've never bought me before. And we shall come to how do you do that. Number two, consumers will always look for alternatives outside of this category. All right? So if you are selling beer and things are really thick, consumers are likely to go drinking spirits because the kick they get is different, so they swap out of your category. And if people are swapping in and out of the category, either you participate in that category or you find what I think Henry was calling collaborations. Because at times when collaborations help to make sure that both of you are benefiting from the swapping that is going on. And then the final thing is consumers squeeze the washing basket syndrome and becomes a real crisis when people are under economic pressure. But that's the job to be done. And I think it's for that very reason that I do feel that a good marketing professional will always be secure and have a job to do. Because it is so dynamic, it is changing every day, and it confounds long-term predictions. You almost have to be on the button every week, every day. I propose a few approaches we could take to adapt to this kind of crisis, and Henry has spoken to some of them. I will not repeat those. Packaging innovation to make sure that it is suitable for a price point, is accessible, and it answers specific occasions, all right? So packaging innovation during crisis is a good thing, and it requires that you work very closely with your innovations team, with your supply colleagues. That's number one. The intention of that is delivering value, accessibility, and being relevant to the occasion. The second thing is spend marketing dollars as close to the sales opportunity as possible, all right? Do not spend too far away from the sales decision. So again, Henry was right. Be as close to your commercial colleagues as much as possible so that together you co-create solutions where your marketing effort and sales opportunity are very close to each other. Persistently activate. When your brands go mute, quiet, docile during a crisis, consumers forget about you. So it is counterintuitive. But those brands that continue to invest during a crisis emerge stronger, and they will actually will always beat competition. So it is for you to have the power of conviction, to sit up with your CFO, with your MD, and convince them that actually during a crisis is a good time to continue investing rather than cut back. And I'm sure for you who are practicing marketing, you're having these conversations with your CFOs. Sharply reinforce your proposition. What do you really stand for? Don't become woolly. Don't become woolly during a crisis, because the listening of somebody in a flux is very short. The attention spans are very, very low. So drive your message very, very sharply. And for all of us who are, again, in this room, a brand sits on 3 legs. One is, what is your proposition? What makes you different? And what makes you distinctive or stand out? If you can always remember those 3 things, if it's an elevator and you just have 1 second to brief this consumer, will you tell them what you are about? Why are you different? And why are you distinctive from other people? So do not overcomplicate the messaging during these times of crisis. Be sharp in reinforcing that. Remember the 6 things I talked about. Tell consumers what is more. Yeah, what is more about your brand. Be able to tell them what is more. Tell them what are you saving them, what is less, less carbohydrates or whatever. Be clear. Easy to use. When a brand is easy to use during a crisis, you are likely to endear yourself to more consumers because they're in a flux, they're struggling. So reinforce the message of easy to use. Quality, and don't be woolly about quality. Does it work? Is it delivering on the promise of this thing will not let you down? It works all the time. If I'm going to buy soap and I get home, I'm not sure whether it is going to clean my clothes. So if you're communicating a detergent, be clear. Is it for stain removal? Is it for fabric care? What is it for? Because I want to be sure that I'm making the right decision because I can't experiment, all right? Affordability, be very bold in communicating your price points or working with your commercial colleagues in executing price points. Whenever you make changes of pricing, you have to make sure that you are doing that right, because people are really, really sensitive to what is the price, all right? And, just want to confirm to them that, the value you're offering, they can afford that. The final thing is put some flair into this, so some fun, right? And this is the elevation of experiences, all right? So if I'm going to use your brand, yes, I hear myself, it is tough, but I need some elevated experience. Give me some reason to feel uplifted while using your products. I know we have a fireplace, so maybe we shall answer some questions, but also hear some sharing from the room of how you guys are dealing with some of the things that I'm discussing with you. So I'll not try and pass the mic around. I know we are tight for time, but it will be good to hear some stories of what are you doing in your own organization to try and deal with some of these things. Internal stakeholder marketing. All right? During a crisis, you have to be the best salesperson for the marketing function in your organization. So the role of the CMO has to be handed to the CEO. You have to make sure that the CEO is in lockstep with what you're doing as a marketing person. Let them be your closest ally. You have to brief them. You have to show them what you're doing, to constantly remind them this is an investment. It's an investment we are making. It is something that will pay off, and demonstrate to them how, all right? So don't not leave this job to only yourself and your team. You have to hand this back to the CEO and ensure that you're together driving this. The second thing is elevating your internal pitch. Sometimes marketing people, we undersell ourselves. So elevate your own internal pitch and almost ensure that it's undistinguishable, the existing of the organization and the marketing work you do. You always have to elevate your pitch. Put it as high as the organizational purpose. Ensure that the strategy is reflected in what you're doing. ensure that the human resource conversations that are happening are all clustered around your brands and brand categories, so that if somebody had to rip marketing out, they are almost ripping out the soul of the organization. So you have to elevate your internal pitch. Be ruthlessly accountable. So I agree with Henry. Agree with the CEO. And I repeat, agree with the CEO. I have a view as a marketing person of what we need to measure. What else would you want us to measure and show you? Let them tell you. Once you've had that alignment, you then go figure out with your colleagues, how do we give them that evidence of measurement, all right? So ensuring that ruthless accountability for the financial investment is clear, especially to the CEO and the CFO. The final thing is be obsessed with brilliant execution. I can tell you I've been a marketing person. I started my career as a brand assistant. I've been blessed to be a CEO for many years. Any CEO is super delighted to brag about great work their people are doing in the city. When a CEO knows that you're going to put on the best execution in the city, they will come. They want to be there. They want to invite their friends. They want to tell the story. So be anal about brilliant execution. When CEOs think your work is clumsy, they tend to distance themselves. They wait for you in the boardroom to give you a hard time. When the job you're doing out here is really great, they want to be with you, they want to share the stage with you, they want to take the praise of, the work you're doing. So really ensure that, you always are focused on brilliant execution. So my final question, if I were a young person deciding what professional I should go into, would I be considering marketing now? Would you consider coming into marketing now? I would advise you, don't go to finance first to come back to marketing after 20 years. Just start properly. Start properly with marketing. So I would be saying, for a young person, please come to marketing. This is where the fun is. And I would be saying for those who are still considering a career, it's a great career. It's exciting. It's meaningful. It's what grows the business. It is what sustains growth. All right? So it's great talking to you. I know it's late in the evening. Hopefully next time we shall start early. Thanks for inviting me, William. And it has been great meeting you, Maria, again. Maria and I have known each other for many years. When I was still a junior brand manager, she gave me a chance to do work at Radio 1. So, Maria, thank you very much. And I hope the partnership, helped both of our brands to grow. And for my colleagues at Uganda Breweries, my colleagues from Stanbic, thank you for staying out so late in the night. I hope all the sharing today is useful and helpful. And hey, Roger Stedman, thanks for the book. And obviously for all the work that you've done in East Africa and sharing your life with marketing people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.